Hey Jennifer, how are you?
Good. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing great. Hey, um, let's get into it. I know we don't have a lot of time. We always start this podcast with what we like to call the over the top intro. So let's get into it.
Okay, I'm ready.
All
Thanks.
the way from Pueblo, Colorado, my next guest is an award-winning director, cinematographer, producer, and a proud dog mom. She began her career in news affiliates based in Denver. She was a production assistant. Since then, she has grown and produced news, entertainment, corporate videos in Hong Kong and New York City. We are here to talk about her feature-length documentary, Photographic Justice, the Corky Lee Story, making its theatrical release starting April 19th. Jennifer Takaki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for that intro, Sam. It was awesome.
Well, let's get into it. I read on the internet that you met Corky Lee while you were trying to find the restroom in 2003.
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I just asked this guy where the bathroom was, and then he gave me the whole history of the building being an all boys school, and it's the women's room is probably on a different floor. And then I just said, just tell me where the men's room is. And he's like, I'll show you. And I'm like, who are you? And he's like, Corky Lee. And then along the way, he gave me all this history of things that he's done and doing, and I thought he was fascinating.
Well, I'm
And
glad it did because it turned into a 20-year project that ended up being this documentary. Was
yeah.
that the thing where I don't know if you had to go or not? We were just like, I really have to talk about this man.
Yeah. Well, if you had the pleasure to meet him, you would know immediately that he is an interesting guy and immediately like someone so worthy of like a documentary. You just want to like for me, I wanted to provide him a platform to get his message out and about his photography and why he did what he did. And I was hoping that he would be on this end doing the Q&A instead of me. But yeah, as the world works, here I
Yeah.
am.
Well, throughout the 20-year progressions, I've heard from the internet. So I just want to ask you this. Are there other versions of this story?
There were other people who've done stories about him for sure. So
Okay.
yeah. So I this is our only film on him that's out, but there are other stories about him. And I would be the first person to say, by the way, like this isn't our film is not the end all be all of Corky Lee. If you are interested in him, there are so many great stories, like whether it's written blog posts, teachers who have done like classes stuff, classwork on him, or whatever it is. There's other documentaries. Like go out and seek them out because they're great and they all deserve their own time and they're all a different perspective. Corky was a fascinating guy with many, 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 many different parts to him. And so, we're just showing one side of this.
Well, one thing I loved about this documentary, and I hope I don't give too much out of the way, is that Corky had to sacrifice a lot of his social life to be at these events that were just happening all around town, all around New York, especially contributing to the Asian American experience at all. Corky was always there. So did that play a factor in how he showed up, or was it just kind of like a necessary evil that he was okay to sacrifice?
I'm not sure that Corky looked at it as a sacrifice. Like, I mean, it was a sacrifice because he did not see his family as much, or, he did not spend, but I think at some point down the road, he learned how to combine work with pleasure. Like, his social life became like the events that he shot, right? So he was able to do both. But for a while, it was just, him like being a fly on the wall, going to these things and shooting them. I don't his brother John Lee in the film says, if you see yourself as a firefighter who, you just show up. Corky was kind of that firefighter. Like that was his DNA, that was his North Star, that's who he was. So he went, right? Like I think there was so much pressure that he put on himself to be there to show up that I'm not sure that he thought much about it, the other things as being a sacrifice, as much as just important to be where he was.
Okay.
It isn't necessary.
Um,
It was just that's what he did.
well, one
That
thing I
was,
want to know, he is a central, obviously the central part of this film. Did he have any input in the film or how it came out?
no, he had no editorial input. He did. I did let him see a couple of cuts. And and if he had said something like, "Well, I really hate this or that," like I might have thought about it, but I would have thought of the greater good of the film. I would never do anything that was inaccurate. But I if he felt it was embarrassing, I might think twice. But he opened up to me about a lot of things, about a lot of private things. He knew the camera was running. I think he felt comfortable enough that I wasn't going to do anything to kind of betray that trust. But at the same time, like we talked about a lot. So,
Okay.
and I think it was important ended up in the film.
I love to ask this question. Wait, I want to ask this question before I get to another one because I really want to touch on this, and I know we don't have a ton of time. But one of the most important parts of the film is the recreation of the Transcontinental Railroad. Apparently, Corky goes there every year, or he does that every time. I guess what I'm saying is the recreation of that. How important was that to him, and to make this a almost annual thing?
It it was important. He shot the first one in 2002 with what the organization called Overseas Chinese Americans. But that was it was a very defined moment, but he always knew that he wanted to recreate it. It didn't happen until 2014. It took that long for it to kind of like simmer in his head for it to move forward. The important thing to know about Corky, he's not just a guy that shows up and shoots. Like he organized that. He thoughtfully put that together. He helped organize the buses, like all these organizations came in and helped him. But he very much was that community organizer mentality that he started off in the 70s as. And so, yeah, that's why it happened. But it was on the 145th anniversary, and he always knew he'd take it to the 150th, which was in 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic was in 2020. So I don't know if everyone would have shown up for 2020, but I think they would have.
Okay, after watching this film, you've gotten, just personally, Jennifer, you have gotten a ton of support from it. Senator John Liu has tweeted about it. And one thing that was shown on camera that Corky was a big inspiration to the Asian community and yourself personally. What was the best lesson I would say that you learned while making this film?
I love the Pan-Asian I love the Pan-Asian aspect of the 70s of the Asian American movement. I love like Corky's crossing cultural boundaries with his photos. I think that that was a really remarkable um thing that he did that no one else was doing back then. We were very much like Chinese American, Japanese American, Filipino American, like everyone kind of just had their groups, but Corky was like moving through those cultural boundaries and taking photos, and he really had to like show up and like get their respect and and really just kind of like show that he was trying to do something for good. I think that that is such an important message for today, this whole idea of inclusion, and Pan-Asianness is a really good thing.
Okay. Now, again, you took 20 years to make this project, right?
No, 18, but yeah, 20.
Okay. All right. And you boiled it down to about 90 minutes. I have to ask Jennifer, what was something left on the cutting room floor that you were just like, I wish I could have put that in there, or oh, I wish I could have elaborated a little bit more on this. What was left out?
There was so much history that was important to Corky. Corky was a history buff, right? He was a history major in college, and he loved history. And I loved like this little things that he would say about history all the time, like that just were so obscure in our world, but in his world it was like so everyday, and he made it so germane. Like he could talk about like Wong Kim Ark was the guy who was responsible for the 14th Amendment that allows you to like essentially you can have a child in the US, and it's an American citizen, right?
Right, right.
Um, it all stemmed from the 1882 Exclusion Act, which was when, they excluded the Chinese from coming to America, but also the Chinese who were in America from becoming naturalized citizens. And it's like these kind of things like Corky would say every day that I really kind of wanted to put into a film. And at one point we did have a film with Wong Chin-fu was the guy who wrote a newspaper called Chinese American, was the first guy to coin it. All of this kind of history that Corky used to say all the time was in a film, was in one of our versions. But that, yeah, it got too obscure, and it was like, you have to make it palatable for the average person. So we did kind of have to cut some of that stuff out. But you get the gist that importance of like AAPI history was important to him.
Well, I loved it, and I know we're up against it, so I got one more question left. what did you want people to experience from this film? I want to ask you as a director because I enjoyed it. I opened up a lot of stuff I didn't think I knew. I knew of Corky Lee from school, but it was just kind of like, all right, here's Corky Lee, and that was it. That's all I got. So, what do you
Pretty good.
want from
Uh,
people to take from this film?
Yeah, so I guess I want people to know Corky, and I think Corky is such an incredible character because he's so charming, so full of life, so knowledgeable that if we successfully made you care about Corky in the film, you will therefore care about the topics that Corky cared about. And that really would be what I hope that you pull from the film.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, this has been awesome. I know we didn't have a ton of time, but I loved it. The again, it's called Photographic Justice, the Corky Lee story. Starting April 19th. It's going to make its theatrical release. And from there, it's just going to blow up. You've been doing the independent stuff, Doc NYC. The film is out there. It's worth taking a look. And thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of your time. And you're welcome back anytime you want to come on the podcast and chop it
Oh my
up.
gosh, thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate it. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time and I appreciate your podcast. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer. You have a great day.
Bye.